Welcome back to Let's Talk About It. I'm your lovely host, Loren. Once upon a time is a phrase that most of us are familiar with before reading or listening to a classic fairy tale story. Everyone is familiar with the tales of Goldilocks, Red Riding Hood, Cinderella, and Snow White. However, there are some fairy tales that are not the same as we remember them. Many of us recognize fairy tale figures like Cinderella, Snow White, Rapunzel, and Sleeping Beauty as Disney princesses. However, wouldn't you know that the stories that we know are not the original tales? The story Disney crafted for these princesses are more lighthearted and toned down versions of the original fairy tales. The original tales of Cinderella and Snow White were created by Jacob and William Grimm, who are also known as the Brothers Grimm, in a collection of stories that were much darker than their modern counterparts. Now, Cinderella in the Grimm version was originally titled Punto. In this tale, Cinderella does not have the well-known fairy godmother to help her. Instead, her wishes are granted by a tree that's growing from her mother's grave. Her father isn't even absent in the fairy tale, but just willfully ignorant of her suffering. Another aspect that changed was the one-night ball, which is a festival that spanned for over 3 days. On the last day of the festival, the prince had a trap for Cinderella when she left. The stairwell was smeared with pitch, which probably is like tar, resulted in one of her slippers being left on the steps. It also should be noted that in this version of Cinderella, the shoe isn't a glass slipper but a golden shoe. Though aspects of the story had changed, the more gruesome parts appear in the third act. There is a shoe-fitting scene. However, when the oldest stepsister could not fit the slipper, the stepmother mutilated her foot by cutting the big toe and pushing the rest into the shoe. This would have been the end if the doves did not point out to the prince that the blood was coming from the shoe. The rest is the same as Cinderella does fit the slipper. However, at the wedding, the stepsisters try to gain Cinderella's favor. The pigeons peck out one eye when they enter the church and another when they come out as their punishment for their wickedness. Next, we'll look at the differences between the Snow White. Now, the original version is called Little Snow White, while the Disney version is called Walt Disney's Snow White. In contrast to Cinderella, the story of Snow White is probably a bit more hardcore. One of the first notable differences is that when the queen asked the huntsman to kill Snow White, instead of the Disney version which she asked to bring the heart of the girl, the queen asked for the liver and lungs. When the husband brings the queen the lungs and liver of what she thinks is Snow White but is instead of a boar, she has a cook boil them with salt and eats them. The rest of the story almost contains the same. The queen does disguise herself as an old woman, but another difference to take from this is that she does not right away eat the poison apple. Actually, it takes the queen 3 tries to kill her. The first attempt was a lace bodice. Now, if you're one of the people who think that a corset can suffocate you, yeah, this is exactly the thing that she attempts. She attempts to suffocate her, it does not work. The second attempt was a poison comb. The girl falls unconscious until the dwarf takes it out of her hair. The final includes the poison apple that we all know and love. However, there is a fun trick to this. It is only the red skin part of the apple that was poisonous and not the white part of the fruit. The girl barely puts it in her mouth and she drops dead, literally. Now, the story kind of falls along the same path almost in this part. She does end up being placed in a glass coffin by the dwarves. But when the prince comes around, he does not kiss her to wake her up. Instead, he bargains with the dwarves and is given the coffin. As his servants are carrying the coffin, one of them stumbles, which causes a piece of the poison apple to dislodge from Snow White's throat. Now, they do end up getting married, and the queen is invited to their wedding. However, when she goes to the wedding and sees that Snow White, she is placed in a pair of iron shoes that were placed in burning coals, and she is forced to dance in the shoes until she drops dead. Quite a morbid ending, shockingly enough. Now, as you can tell, these are a lot more hardcore than the original fairy tales. If you're interested in that, I will highly suggest to read the Grimm fairy tale version of these stories and many of their stories in their in their book collection. Now that will be all for today. You should check out our next podcast for part 2 of the Dark Side of Fairy Tales, where I probably will be looking at Sleeping Beauty and another character. This has been Let's Talk About It. I have been your host, Loren Lyles, signing off.